Serious? Have you cheated death? What's your story? I was chatting away with a bunch of friends in high school, standing in a pedestrian-only street. Suddenly my friend's face goes blank, and she reaches out and pulls me in by my collar. Without a word, a huge truck whooshes behind me, right by, not an inch to spare. It thundered by at full speed. I didn't even hear it until it passed me. She didn't have time to say anything or panic, just casually pulled me away from certain death. Very grateful for her quick reflexes. I was dead for around 6 minutes at the bottom of a pool and they revived me. When I was 18 years old, parkour was all the rage. I climbed commercial buildings weekly with a friend. One night during a full moon we decided to climb a 12-story building under construction. I got to the top, jumped from an I-beam to another. Except it was rounded. I slipped and fell. Instead of falling 50 meters, I landed on my nuts on a post at a 45-degree angle. I slid what felt like forever backwards, further grinding my poor boys. I may have not died, but future generations may have. I'm a recovering addict. Spent a little over 10 years in active opiate addiction. Towards the end of my last run I was actually trying to kill myself, not because I wanted to die, but because I had given up. I just wanted the mental anguish to stop. Long story short, I overdosed 13 separate occasions. I definitely consider that cheating death. People die from an overdose literally every day in my city. I've been sober for almost 3 years now. Edit. I just wanted to thank everyone for their kind words. I'm blown away by the show of support. I really am. I don't socialize much. It really means a lot. On Christmas 2017 I ate a piece of some dry-ass meat. I was chewing and chewing it, but it was still a hunk of meat. I finally swallow and feel it just stick in my throat. I try to swallow it, doesn't budge. I try to cough and nothing. I realize that I'm not breathing and I start panicking. I slap my hand down on the counter to get my sister's attention and she looks at me a little funny and says, "What?" I motion to my throat in the most morbid game of charades that I'm choking. She says, "Oh my god, are you choking?" and runs to me and starts the Heimlich. All I can think about is my 1-year-old daughter having to grow up knowing her mum died on Christmas. I was getting lightheaded and finally the piece of meat is hurled out of my mouth and I'm gasping, crying. I hug my sister and we're both just sobbing. It was the scariest, ugliest feeling knowing I couldn't breathe no matter how much I wanted to, needed to. Chew carefully, my friends. At least thrice. First time I was 16 and as dumb 16-year-olds do, ingested multiple drugs at once, a very large dose of DXM, little Valium and a little alcohol. As far as I remember I was having a great trip. Then I woke up to my best friend slapping me and saying, "If you don't sit up and talk to me right now I'm calling an ambulance," and saying to another person, "I don't think she's breathing," at which point I sat up, snapped out of it and ended up fine. I later learned that ingesting the amount of DXM I took that night can lead to coma and death. At 25 I tried to break up a fight in a bar and was thrown through a huge glass storefront window. It partially severed my femoral artery. Thankfully I had become an EMT at 19, so I instructed my friend, now partner of 8 years, to use his belt as a tourniquet while I held pressure with his hoodie. The medics had an 11-minute response time. You can bleed out from a femoral cut in 4-7, and informed me in the ambulance that had we not had the bleeding controlled by the time they got there I would have already been dead. I lucked out and had partially severed only one branch of the artery just below where it forks around the knee joint. My dressing burst in the hospital and I almost bled out. Again, I lost something like 1/3 plus of the blood in my body and had to be transfused with for 6 units before being stable. At 30 I was driving on the highway. An old lady drove the wrong way down my side of the highway. I missed the head-on by inches and just as I breathed a sigh of relief another car hit me from behind. They were also avoiding the head-on with the senile old lady, and it flipped my pickup over a concrete, grass median into oncoming traffic. I walked away with a concussion and some bruises, and a total truck that I had just bought 2 weeks prior. I took a photo of my truck while waiting for the ambulance. When I showed it to the hospital staff, they said they couldn't believe I walked away. The driver's side roof was caved in. It was one of 3 head injuries I sustained that year. I now have pretty serious PTSD, and when lights hit my eyes a certain way I get crazy dizzy and feel faint for a while, which happens almost daily, sometimes multiple times a day. I also have a blood iron issue, possibly due to having lost so much blood all at once, or possibly just because it's common in women. I've also had guns pulled on me twice. Once by Nipped and once by a tweaker in California. There are probably other close calls I'm forgetting. I just turned 32, and when I talk to other people my age, it's finally hitting me that my life has been insane. But I wouldn't have it any other way. In Afghanistan, I was supposed to be in a truck that was hit by a nide. 4 out of the 6 people on that truck burned alive. I was supposed to be in that truck as a dismount, but the powers that be decided I would be on the second truck. We listened to them burn until Combs died. Then we got out and I got to listen to them burn with my own ears. For 6 minutes we listened to them screaming while we were being shot at. I'll never forget that sound. Not sure it fits, but one time when I was like 13, I was messing around with my brother and a friend of us. Being teenagers with nothing to do on a hot summer day, we decided that we had to destroy something. Me and my brother had this shelter with a bunch of crap that nobody used, so we started destroying pieces of wood, chairs and things like that with a big ass hammer. At some point we had the brilliant idea to throw this hammer against a plank of wood and try to break it. It was my turn, so I throwed it against the piece of wood and it fucking bounced back, missing my head by a few centimeters. Had it hit me, I would probably be dead right now. We stopped doing shit like that immediately. For that day, I have a rare condition that makes me prone to aneurysms. In 2018, I was helping a buddy work on a car when it felt like I was shot in the abdomen. I had my buddy take me to the ER. When I was finally seen, my BP was so low they had no idea how I was still conscious. I was rushed to imaging where it was determined an aneurysm had started dissecting and I was losing blood fast. I had a 5% chance of coming out of the surgery alive, and then 10% to even walk out of the hospital within a week. Needless to say, I'm here. Twice, when I was 2 and 3. When I was 2, I ingested my mother's epilepsy medicine and almost overdosed. Probably thought it was candy or something. When I was 3, I was riding on a shopping cart when my older sibling was messing around with the cart, causing me to fall and hit my head on a sewer lid. My injury later developed into meningitis and I almost died. I cheated death twice and I hadn't even turned 5. Maybe after being cheated twice, death was like, okay fine, live your life, you little shit. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.